Perfect. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here this morning. Like I said, I think I recognize most of your names, but just in case, my name is Melissa. I am the manager of governance and elections here at the USC. This is our final workshop in this campaign school series. If you've missed any of them, though, we have recorded all of them. I think the first 3 are already up on the website. I'll get the last 2 up hopefully today or Monday. I'm here in London, Ontario. I don't know where everyone is. I don't think, actually, I know that not everyone is here in London, but what that means for me being here today is that I am in the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Attawandaron peoples. I think I've said this in all of my land acknowledgements this week, but that means that we're very close to the Oneida of the Thames First Nation, Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, and Munsee Delaware Nation. That's all based on a map, and all that really does is document the historical displacement of Indigenous peoples in this country. Yesterday, I talked about the Quebec legislature and the decision not to enact racist principle because the document or the legislation included references to systemic racism. Also, yesterday, American Thanksgiving, which is a fun colonial holiday, and by fun, quotation marks, very much meant that really Canadian Thanksgiving celebrations as well, but really just enshrine the colonial process in North America. And so I think it's really important that we kind of challenge that. I talked about last week too about the importance of unlearning and relearning our own histories and the histories of the land that we're on. And I think kind of those major holidays that are treated as major holidays for settlers are a really good time to do that, and to do that reflective piece and think about why we are taking the time that we're taking. And so I think it's just a good reminder as we go through this process and as we look at leadership opportunities to do that work of being uncomfortable and being somewhat vulnerable and examining what it means to be wrong and to have privilege and think about how we use that privilege to be intrinsic accomplices in our work. I think that's all I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to start rambling. So I will turn it over to Julia and Gwenan. They are our CRO and DRO this year, and they are going to walk you through kind of the structures around the elections process. So the rules, the bylaws, the policies, all of that stuff that you need to know in order to run a campaign that keeps you on the right side of our rules. I will mute myself. If there are any technical issues, message me, wave, whatever you need.
Awesome. Hi, thank you so much for coming this morning. I'll just introduce myself really quickly, and I'll let Gwenan introduce herself really quickly, and then we'll just get started on the presentation. So I'm Julia. I am the CRO this year, and I'm a 4th year in political science.
And hey guys, I'm Gwenan. I'm the DRO this year, and I'm in my 4th year of health sciences. So I'll just
Are you screen share, or do you want me to screen share the whole thing?
Do you want to do it?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, can everybody see okay? Perfect. So let me just, oh my gosh, it started just right there at the end. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, just give me a second. Okay, wonderful. So we'll get started with, I just want to kind of reiterate the dates. I don't know if you've done that in the past campaign schools. So nominations will open on January 12th at 8 a.m. And keep in mind that these dates have been moved a week because of Western's decision to extend holidays for a week. So now the campaign period will start on January 20th at 12:01 a.m. and polls open at 8 a.m. on February 1st and close the next day at 8 p.m. on February 2nd. And that's also the day your expense reports will be due at 4 p.m. Results will be released on February 4th, and we leave a day just to make sure all the results are fine and if there's any appeals. So we have wiggle room there for that reason. Moving on. Okay, so now I'm going to be going over some rules of campaigning and from the bylaw. Section 1.1 talks about acting in contempt, and that usually means willful disobedience to or open disrespect of the committee. So that means like if you're intentionally doing something and being respectful for the elections governance committee, and this can be like repeating a violation. So if you do something once, we give you a warning, you do it again, that means the second time it was intentional. And so this is what it's really talking about. So the rules for elections, plebiscite, and referenda as set out by the EGC violations policy. Fair play. So candidates shall campaign in accordance with the rules of fair play. Breaking the rules of fair play include, but are not limited to, libel, slander, general sabotage of the campaigns of other candidates, misrepresentation of fact, and malicious or intentional breach of this violations policy or applicable regulations. So basically, you can't go around ruining other people's campaigns or doing something that's extremely malicious. Responsibility of candidates. So candidates shall be responsible for the actions and the violations stemming from such actions of any campaign volunteers, unless the candidate satisfies the committee that they did not direct the action and could not have reasonably foreseen that the action would occur. So this is for all the volunteers that, candidates are responsible for. And the candidates shall compile and maintain an up-to-date list of the names and email addresses of all campaign volunteers, and the list shall be forwarded to the CRO within 6 hours of the CRO's request. It is the responsibility of the candidate to ensure that all campaign plans, materials, and/or advertisements conform to all policies and regulations of the USC and university, including King's University College, Brescia, Huron, as well as student residences, and obviously with all municipal, provincial, and federal laws. Campaign displays and the distribution of literature on campus are also subject to the requirements of the facilities management and/or reservations office and/or housing. So obviously wherever you are, whichever organization or institution you're inside, you have to be following their rules. Benefits acquired by virtue of office. So candidates and campaign volunteers are not entitled to use in their campaign any service, benefits, or resources conferred on them by virtue of holding any position in any organization. So this could include anything: mailing lists, office space, supplies, social media platform. So if you work for the USC, you can't, use a specific mailing list you have of students or of any other, group of people to campaign. And the reason for this is because it's unfair that other candidates don't have the same mailing list. And this is not limited to the USC. If you work anywhere else, any other organization, you cannot use their resources to campaign. Any student who is a USC executive, associate vice president, intern, or coordinator cannot endorse a candidate or be a campaign volunteer during the campaigning or balloting periods of the election unless they take an unpaid leave of absence for the duration of the campaign period. So you cannot, this year, you can run and you'd have to take a leave of absence if you're a USC executive, AVP, intern, or coordinator. However, we're asking that you do not endorse or volunteer for a campaign. Candidates shall not solicit the aid or endorsement of any USC staff or executive member for the purposes of campaigning, not including consultations for the sake of creating a platform. Approval of campaign materials and activities. So all printed campaign materials and advertisements require approval by the CRO in advance of posting, printing, and/or distributing. And the campaign materials shall only be approved in the immediate lead up to and during the campaign period. So this is how the artwork upload form looks, and once the website is up, you will be able to find this over there. If you have anything that you want to post, print, you're going to have to get approval by the CRO first. This is about the events proposal. All candidates are required to submit an event proposal to the CRO for approval for any USC elections related events, including volunteer rallies, campaign lunch parties, and social events. This shall be a requirement for events both on and off the university's campus. And this proposal shall be submitted to the CRO for approval at least 48 hours prior to the intended event. So for this year, we're kind of including Zoom events and any online events as well, mainly because we want to have a good idea of what all candidates are up to, and we want to make sure we know where there's a gathering of students in case something goes wrong. We just want to make sure we knew it was happening. So the rule of thumb is that any event is considered an event if it's designed to gather students for the purposes of campaigning. And this is how the event proposal upload form looks like on our website. You can go there and submit any events that you're planning to have in the future. Pre-campaigning. This is a big one every year. Candidates are not permitted to distribute campaign materials prior to the campaign period. Prior to the campaign period, the maximum number of campaign volunteers a candidate is permitted to have on their campaign team is limited to 50. You can't have any open social media campaigns, pages, Facebook events, liking, sharing, any of that. It all must be unpublished and private. But you are permitted to assemble your campaign team, obviously, conduct interviews for platform development. Cross-campaigning. Cross-campaigning in any election is prohibited. Each candidate must maintain separate finances and produce unique campaign materials. So you can't share your resources or share ideas or platforms with other candidates. And honestly, I don't understand why you would, but just letting you know. On-campus campaigning. So candidates shall not campaign in the USC main offices or council chambers or during any meeting of council or the standing committees of council, regardless of the location. And this prohibition shall include but not be limited to the display of campaign materials, verbal campaigning, and discussion of campaign logistics. Off-campus campaigning. Candidates and their volunteers may campaign in locations off of the university's campus. This could include things like rallies, campaign lunch parties, and social events, like I said before. And any and all off-campus events must also receive approval from the CRO. This might look on-campus and off-campus campaigning both are going to look different because in previous years you were allowed to do it. However, this year, no in-person events are allowed unless things get better, but honestly, that's very dependent on the pandemic and the situation. But for now, you guys should be planning as if no in-person events are allowed. So this could be enforced a bit more strictly because it also depends on if you're breaking municipal or provincial laws. So just keep that in mind. Campaigning during the voting period. So while the polls are open, candidates and their volunteers are permitted to continue campaigning as normal, pursuant to the following restrictions. So all campaigning shall be prohibited within the sightline of all designated polling stations, and no candidate, campaign volunteer, or any other party shall cause a willful disturbance or interfere or attempt to interfere with an individual's right to vote or coerce or attempt to coerce a vote through the use of intimidation. And candidates and their campaign volunteers shall not establish their own polling stations to get votes. So this basically is saying that you can't force people to vote for you, which should make a lot of sense because we can't force people to do such stuff. And an example of this would be like if you had an iPad with the, voting website open and you're taking around to people and you're like, hey, vote for me, because at that point you might be coercing people. So campaign materials and branding. Candidates in all elections, presidential and divisional, shall refrain from the use of the USC or university logo and any other USC or university copyrighted material or image. When producing materials, printed, written, any kind for the purposes of campaigning, you are not allowed to use the USC logo, any other USC copyrighted material. And candidates shall not be able to declare their campaign color as the color purple or any color that can reasonably be mistaken for the color purple. So for the most part, that just means purple. You can't have it as your campaign color. Campaign material cannot contain copyrighted material or images without the consent of the copyright holder. And campaign materials also may not depict images of alcohol or drug use. All campaign material must not be in violation of the UWO Code of Student Conduct or the USC Community Standard Policy.
Okay, so now we're gonna move on to we're gonna talk about affiliate campuses for just a second. It's mostly just contact information. And then I'm gonna chat a little bit about finance. So this is just a quick list of other campuses' CROs. So I'll leave this here. I think you're gonna be able to watch this recording back, so you should be able to access this information, but these are the affiliate campuses, CROs, and IBs. Okay, so now getting into campaign finance rules. Each kind of campaign has a campaign spending limit. So if you're running for sort of like the bigger campaign, so president, you're gonna have a $1,500 campaign spending limit. If you're running for faculty president, you have a $200 spending limit. And if you're running for some sort of counselor position in a faculty, you have a $100 spending limit. So what a spending limit is made up of is a campaign expenses and campaign contributions, which I'm going to get into what each of those two are. So campaign expenses are considered to be costs incurred for goods, privileges, and services. So that's anything that you've basically individually paid for. So if you've gone and printed a bunch of posters, or if you've paid to rent a space, That's like a personal expense that you have paid for. On the other hand, contributions are services donated or given to a candidate, and these are going to be evaluated at fair market value. So if you, let's say, order a ton of food worth $300, but the restaurant says like, we'll give it to you for $0, you still have to record it as that $300 in your campaign spending limit. That's what would be considered the fair market value of what you've received. So even though technically they've given it to you for nothing, it's still evaluated at $300. And so that's what you'd write down. Campaigns cannot receive cash as contributions. So you can sort of receive items, but you can't receive just cash. And then when you are recording your finances and you receive a contribution, just make sure that you're writing down the contact information of who has contributed to your campaign. Okay, so just going back, fair market value is the typical price that is available to all persons who would approach that company to sell the product. So it's basically just the cost that every single other person would get for that thing. So if a business says, oh, we'll give you 20% off this purchase of $100, so it'd only be $80, the fair market value is still $100. So again, that's still what you would write down. This is just a list of acceptable expenses and contributions. So you can receive, supplies for your campaigns, printing costs, promotional attire, food at campaign and volunteer rallies, space rentals, paid advertising, if you've paid for a website domain name, and then bar and cover. And so that has sort of a little caveat to it. So you can do bar cover and wristbands as long as no alcohol is directly involved in the distribution of the wristband. So really just like free cover is sort of the deal with those bar cover wristbands. Obviously that's not going to be happening this year. I doubt the bars are going to be open, but just so you know. And then unacceptable expenses and contributions. This is including but not limited to, but just as a short list, anything to do with alcohol or drugs. And then long-term fixed assets, that's like buying a computer or a 3D printer, the examples we give here. So special considerations, if an item was used during a campaign period, but all of the item wasn't consumed, you still have to record the entire cost of what it was. Candidates will declare expenses and contributions for making campaign materials and media available to the public. So again, that's like those domain names if you paid for a website or paid advertising. If a professional, including a campaign volunteer, would normally charge for a service that a candidate has received for free, the value is considered a contribution. So again, that goes back to that like fair market value thing. So even though you're getting a service for free, you still have to record it as a contribution at fair market value price. If a friend who is not normally in the business of providing the service to others at a fee performs a service for you, then you will not have to expense it. So if someone normally provides a service for free, you don't have to use that as a contribution because that's not really considered something they usually, I would say, sell if it's normally for a free service. Tracking expenses. So it is mandatory to use the campaign expense tracker, and original receipts must be submitted for each expense. Tracking sheets are due the last day of polling by 4 p.m. That's just to say you probably shouldn't maybe be spending more money after polling's over. And then late submissions will result in the decrease of the candidate's eligible reimbursement of 5% per business day. So every day that you don't turn in your tracking or your tracking expenses, your reimbursement will go down 5%. This is a summary tab, which will just show like the reimbursements, what you've spent, all that kind of stuff. This is what you'll use to record an expense. So it's really, really small, but basically you'll put your receipt number, which would be on there, where you got it, what you got, how much you spent, all that kind of good stuff. Reimbursement is your bond. So your bond is what you pay to run in the campaign. So I believe like president is $300. It's less for the smaller ones. And then plus your eligible expenses minus your fines. You're not reimbursed for contributions. So if, even though you're recording it as like this fair market value of like $100, you've still gotten it for free. So you wouldn't get reimbursed for that. Reimbursement checks will be available at the USC front desk no later than February 16th. February 16th is exactly 2 weeks after polls close. So that's how long that the reimbursement checks will be available. These are going to be the eligible reimbursements, and I just want to say it'll be really important to track your finances really well. So these are just the things that you'll be reimbursed for. So campaign expenses with verifiable original receipts, that's really important, sort of what I said before. Non-acceptable expenses can lead to penalties and non-reimbursement. Items that will be flagged, we have a finance manager in the EGC, and so they'll sort of be the ones reviewing this kind of stuff. But if they flagged it, it'll be brought to the committee's attention for approval. And then a running list of acceptable items is available, but this is in our current website, so on the current website. Okay, so now we're going into the violations procedure. So if you are running a campaign and you notice that another campaign might be violating some rule somewhere, you are going to go to our website and submit a violation submission form. And this is what it looks like. Any allegations must be submitted to the committee no later than 4 hours after the close of balloting. We do this so you aren't able to just like try to dig up as many violations hours and hours and hours after balloting is closing just to throw your hat at as many violations as you can. The names of individuals making the allegation, so if you're the one who submitted the form, will not be released to candidates, the media, or the public unless you've broken a law, like a municipal or federal law. Names shall only be required to allow committees to process the allegation. So it would only be available to us inside the committee. You will not be informed of alleged violations until it has been verified of the legitimacy of the violation and believe there's enough evidence to conduct a hearing. And then you'll be informed of a hearing no fewer than 6 hours in advance with a written summary of the allegation prepared by someone in investigations and a copy of the findings of the investigations. So if we decide that the violation is eligible for a hearing, this is what will happen. So we will redact the names of other identifying information. If you're unable to attend a hearing, you will have to send a proxy, and you must send it with a written notice, and you must let us know at least 1 hour prior to the scheduled hearing. An audio recording of the hearing will be kept with the manager of investigations as part of the investigation file and shall not be released to any member of the public with the exception of the USC's appeals board in the event that the party who got the violation appeals it. If you fail to attend a hearing and do not send a proxy, we will assume you have no further evidence to add to the case and will proceed directly to deliberations. So this is the criteria that the EGC uses to evaluate violations. So degree of scope, which is the reach of influence as measured by the possible range of students affected by the candidate's violation. So how many people did it affect and reach? Degree of influence, the strength of influence the violation had in creating an unfair advantage for the candidate's campaign and its potential of impacting election results. Degree of intent, whether the intent was malicious or whether the candidate in question lacked the intent to take responsible precautions to prevent the violation from occurring. Degree of repetition, whether the candidate in question committed a violation similar in nature to the one in question during that campaign period, So that sort of goes back to like the willful disobedience thing that we talked about in the first rule. So if you do it once, it's sort of an accident and we'll give you a warning. But if you continue to repeatedly violate that same rule, that would be considered willful disobedience and in contempt with the EGC. And then the legality of action, whether the violation breaks any municipal, provincial, or federal laws, don't break the law. And degree of obstruction, which is whether at any point in time during the investigation, the candidate in question attempted to impede the committee's ability to investigate. So if you tried to interfere with the investigation. So we have two outcomes or sanctions for violations now, which are lesser violations and severe violations. So lesser violations doesn't warrant disqualification, and it's basically usually just an official warning. So we'll basically tell you to knock it off and not do it again. A severe violation, on the other hand, warrants disqualification. And so if you break one of these severe violation rules, you will immediately be disqualified from campaigning. I'm not going to read through all of these, but I'll hit some big ones. So lesser violations are obviously what you're going to, probably if you're reporting a violation, what you get more often. So basically not adhering to bylaw 2, the procedure, all the stuff that we've kind of gone through today. If your campaign materials doesn't comply with our policies, if you don't maintain separate finances, if you campaign in the USC main offices, kind of all this stuff that we walked through in the bylaw. I have highlighted this bottom form for a reason. So it used to be that if you campaign in any form in student residences that doesn't comply with regulations, that's a lesser violation. We're still leaving it there, but please, please, please keep in mind that if municipal law states that you cannot gather this way, that would become a severe violation. So it might change. I just want to point that out to you now, and the reason I've highlighted it is that if you do it in a way that violates municipal law, the way it will be set out this January, this is a severe violation because you've violated an actual municipal law. Again, I want to point that out now. It's under lesser, it might be severe. Okay, and we're going to ask questions after, but just so you know. Just more or lesser violations, using the color purple, using the USC logo. Again, if you don't comply with off-campus campaigning, so same like in-campus, off-campus. And then posting materials prior to campaign period. So all that kind of stuff is considered a lesser violation. Pre-campaigning, this last one is a really big one that happens every year, so. And then these are examples of severe violations. So if you don't meet candidate eligibility, if you act in contempt of the committees, that's the willful disobedience. If you interfere with voters, ballots, voting procedures, counting, solicitation of the login information necessary for voting. So if you try to ask people what their login would be for voting, action or conduct which represents a flagrant undermining of the purpose and effect of the electoral process. Willful violation of bylaw 2, again, that's repeating the same offense. Failing to comply with the restrictions of off-campus campaigning, and violating any municipal, provincial, or federal laws. Appeal. So after you have been, if the EGC has decided that you did commit this violation, you may appeal it under the purview of the appeals board, and this is set out in bylaw 6. If they deem it under their jurisdiction, the appeal will go to a hearing again. This is my email and Kanan's email, just as another if you need to contact us. And that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
We also have a Kahoot after this, so hopefully you guys paid attention. but you guys can go ahead and ask your questions
Yeah,
first.
Callista, I see your hands up.
Yeah, for the events this year, I'm assuming, I guess, in-person events are probably, if again with the residents, would becoming an in-person like campaign rally become a violation in some respects, or for the form as well, does that include Zoom events?
Like for the events proposal?
Yeah, would that include like Zoom campaign events?
Yes, just for this year, we are gonna ask that you submit an events proposal for Zoom events. That's again just so we can keep track, or if something goes incredibly haywire at it, like if someone for some reason, let's say submits a violation for something that happens at the Zoom call, it's good for us to be able to track sort of like when that happened, sort of what was going on.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say not like Zoom is one of the platforms, but it could be other online platforms as well. Just a rule of thumb that we said was that any event is anything that gathers students for the purposes of campaigning. So we would want you to submit an event proposal for that.
Okay. And then in terms of, I guess it really depends with the provincial rules, but in-person rallies or events as well, what is the line there between following like what's in the rules for bylaw, but also the provincial government rules as well?
Yeah, it's gonna be, you know what, I don't want to 100% answer. Again, I don't think have a perfectly crystal clear version of what's gonna be happening. It's just gonna be about like making sure that we're keeping with definitely municipal laws. If you break any municipal law, I think we've basically decided like that would be an immediate disqualification. If you're getting like 50 people together, that would be okay. But I think it's just going to depend sort of what's going on in January, and there's going to be a all candidates meeting then, and it is a very similar presentation to this one, except we'll have a great idea of what's going on. But yeah, sorry if that's not super helpful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. No worries. Yeah, we don't know what's gonna happen, but yeah.
Can I just jump in there?
Yeah.
So I have put together a like COVID and elections FAQ. I'll throw it in the chat. I think it should be. We just need to double check the website there. I'll link my Google form that I used. Basically, we're asking people to prepare for an entirely online election because we want to make sure we're being as safe as possible. We are asking people not to, at this point, plan any in-person campaign or campaigning. I'm just going to take a look. Yeah, everything's going to be online from our nominations right on through. So that's the guidance that we can offer at this point. But to Julia's point, the all candidates meeting is going to be it's mandatory anyways, so you have to be there or send a proxy. But either way, that's going to be kind of the final word on what our campaign looks like at that point, because I'm sure you're all aware, as people come back from the holidays, we could be looking at spikes and all that stuff. So we just don't want to make any promises that we can't keep, and would definitely encourage everyone to be planning for creative online processes. I will throw that link in the chat though. Just give me one sec.
Perfect. Ben, I think your hand up was next.
Yeah, sorry, this isn't really a question. It was more of kind of a minor correction here. So for context, I'm the president of the KUCSC at King's. The email you put up for contacting elections at King's, that is not a current email. I just wanted to flag that so everyone knows.
I'll put that down.
Yeah, the current one is associate.governance@kucsc.com. The election at KUCSC isn't used anymore.
Awesome, thanks, Ben. Matthias, sorry.
It's Matthias, that's okay. I just had a question regarding kind of like how these relate to internal USC elections, because it felt like they were all very focused on like kind of the presidential election. I'm just wondering like how they transfer over. Is there a different set of rules entirely for internal elections, or kind of how does that work?
Well, I would say by and large, it'll be similar rules. Like, again, you still have to follow all like the regular bylaw stuff, all the regular procedural stuff. All the campaign rules are going to be the same. It's just different in terms of voting, really. So it's, again, I think, again, by and large, very similar rules. Do you have like a more specific question as far as internal elections go?
Yeah, I guess I did in the expenses section. I didn't see anything relating to like if there's an expense limit for internal elections.
That's a great question. I might throw you over to Melissa for that if she has it on hand, because I don't think I do.
I'll double check it for you. There is an external expense limit. I want to make sure I give you the right number. I'm pretty sure I know what it is. Just give me one second though. I'll throw it in the chat if you want to, if there are other questions, or I'll interrupt in a minute.
Okay, thanks.
Ben?
Sorry.
Or you just go up. Okay. Anything else, or we can jump into the Kahoot?
Actually, I do have one more question. So for the coordinators, interns, associates, in the bylaw, they can still take a leave of absence, both to campaign and to, I guess, but they're being asked not to volunteer. But where's the line between can they still request to leave and volunteer? That's kind of something that's been kind of mulling around in the office, and we don't really have full clarity. And I know we're meeting about it on Monday, but just kind of getting it from your perspective as the DRO and CRO, where you guys see this rule with the election.
Yeah, so that's a super good question. Yeah, we'll be
Hop in on this one.
yes.
Okay, so we are gonna, because you're right, they're gonna talk more about it on Monday. Basically, this is something where there is a line between kind of the elections process and then kind of the employment process for USC staff, and that includes coordinators, interns, and associates. So based on the email that went out yesterday, I think, what is being asked by the executive team, and Mark was here briefly, I was gonna ask him to speak to this a little bit more, is that from an employment perspective, you don't volunteer or endorse candidates. From the elections bylaw, from a strictly policy perspective, the option exists, but that's something that as an employer, the USC can do. I think if you have, like, obviously, I expect there to be questions about that, but we do have the town hall so that we can get more of that information from the executive's perspective, and like that supervisory role that they have with the CIA. I know that's not a perfect answer, but I think they're going to have more of that information than Julia and Conan are at this point.
Thank you.
I'm still looking, Matthias.
Any other questions?
Okay, well, if not, or if you have any other ones, I will drop my email and Conan's email in the chat here as well if you want to email us privately. And then other than that, we can do the Kahoot if Conan, you want to set that up.
Yeah, for sure. quiet? Is the sound way too loud, or should we? Okay.
Haley, the emojis show up so much on the Scoot.
It's gonna be me the entire time. I'm just gonna be like, Okay, I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that everyone who's joining?
Are we good to go? Okay.
Right.
Okay, so Julia is the chairperson of the Elections Governance Committee, which is the committee that kind of, is responsible for running the elections come January. Okay, so Ben is at the top. Moving on. Seemed like everyone knew that one. Well, that's great. That means nobody's going to be declaring their campaign colors purple. That's good to know. Okay, so it is in fact 50 people. You can only have 50 people as campaign volunteers. Okay. Okay, so the campaign period actually begins on January 20th at 12:01 a.m. January 12th is the nominations, and I think the rest of the dates are just random. Okay, Cal's gone up. Great. Okay. Wow, great. We didn't even cover it yet. Everybody knew, so that's great. But so now we've kind of switched to this lesser or severe. But before, in previous years, the EGC used to use a demerit point system. Okay. Cal still at the top. Okay, so this is an important one. You are only allowed to kind of submit allegations till 4 hours after the closing of the ballots. After that, we don't allow you to submit any violations just because we also need to present the results. Okay, so acting in contempt of the EGC, we've said this over and over again, but it's willful disobedience and open disrespect of the committee, both. Okay, Emily has jumped to the top. Okay, the results night is actually February 4th, which is 2 days after balloting closes. So the outcome of being found guilty of a severe violation is disqualification. And it's interesting because you could, depending on what, the violation was for, you could actually also get arrested if you broke, a huge provincial law that, warrants being arrested or something. But you will definitely be disqualified when it comes to the a severe violation by the EGC. Okay. Six hours. That's the correct answer. Candidates have 6 hours to submit a volunteer list upon the CRO's request. So, it would be good to just have an updated list at all times. If somebody changes their email or contact information, or you change volunteers, you should make sure to update it right away in case the CRO requests for it. Okay. So accidental breach, it's in the bylaw, it says intentional breach. So if something is accidental, obviously that's the responsibility of the EGC to investigate and figure out whether something was accidental or if something was done intentionally. But if we come to know that it was something just, there was no malicious intent involved, it doesn't count as breaking the rules of fair play. Okay, so nobody got this right. Which of the following is not considered a criteria used to evaluate violations? The degree of severity is kind of what we're trying to get at. It's not considered a criteria. We try to figure out the degree of influence, obstruction, and repetition so that we can, figure out if something is considered consider a violation, if we should be sanctioning the person. Okay, great. Everybody got that right. You are not allowed to share any sort of campaign materials or, platforms.
Can I just hear on that one real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So the only thing I will say, because I had questions about this in an earlier campaign school session. If you're consulting students, chances are good that you're going to have some similar issues come up. We're not saying that your platform must not have any similarities to anyone else. What we're saying is that you can't just copy and paste someone else's platform, or have people running on a joint platform or something like that. Chances are good that if you're talking to students, you're going to probably have something about mental health. You're probably going to have something about sustainability. It's not the overall themes, it's your response to it. So you can't have the same, solution to the problem as someone else does. Similarity, it's going to happen. It's that it still needs to be your unique approach to the problem. So I just want to clarify that for anyone who wasn't on that call. I think actually it's the one from yesterday. So just wanted to make that clear.
Thanks, Melissa. On to the next question. Okay, so the equation for the campaign spending limit is actually expenses plus contribution. So that's what makes up the spending limit. Next. Okay, Emily has jumped up once again. Okay, so this is false, mainly because candidates are not allowed to accept cash as contribution, but you can accept goods or services. Yeah. Okay, that everybody got that real fast. So the campaign spending limit for presidential candidates is $1,500. Okay, everybody's at the same spot. Okay, I'm glad that's clear that you can't kind of have alcohol or alcoholic vouchers or drugs as your expenses. Still the same. Okay, this is false because original receipts must be submitted for an expense in order for you to be eligible for reimbursements. Okay, so willful violation of bylaw 2 is actually a severe violation. Just breaking, if you accidentally break a rule from the bylaw 2 or the policy, that would be a lesser violation. But if you're willfully violating bylaw 2, that would be considered a severe violation. And I don't think anything can be considered both at the same time. Okay, Haley has jumped up to second. Okay, next. Okay, so most people got that right, or majority at least. The failure of a campaign to maintain separate finances, it's not a severe violation, but it is a lesser violation. Okay, guys, I think this is the last question. So this is your only chance. Okay, so decisions by the EGC can be appealed if you think that something was unfair or something was not, done properly, then you can appeal the decisions. And that was it. Let's see who won. Emily in third, Haley in second, and is it? I can't see. Oh, it's Ben in first. Okay, guys, congratulations. Great job. You all did really well. Let me stop sharing the screen. Okay, so I hope you guys got some information out of this campaign school. Does anybody have any other questions? I'm gonna say no.
Also, so in that, pardon me. In that case, then we will wrap up. I know we had this going until I think noon, but I don't know that anyone's going to complain about having an extra half hour in their day. So thank you all for coming again. If you do have questions, you know where to find all of us. You'll get an email from me probably on Monday with like feedback forms and links to things. So if nothing else, you'll have my email for sure, and I can make sure you get to the right person, whether it's about this session or any of the other sessions that you've attended. On the feedback form note, please fill it out. It makes life, I don't know if it makes life easier for me, but it makes life better for me because I can make sure that we are giving you information that is actually useful and can kind of keep improving on this stuff year over year. This is the first time we've done a campaign school this way. In a perfect world, I would like to be able to do them in person and maybe like make it an event of it. So that is something we're keeping in mind for future years that hopefully are not as impacted by COVID-19. I don't think I have anything else to say except that I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and that you actually get to enjoy it. I know it's kind of not exactly a fun and relaxing time of year, but I do hope you get some time to relax this weekend and hope to see you all submitting nomination forms in January.
Yes.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.